have a look at your screen for a second. I'll go back here to make sure I'm in the right view. So what we've got is we've got the seven cervical vertebrae at the top, and then we've got this lovely, if you feel down the back of your neck, you've got this lovely protrusion that feels it's quite it's quite apparent, poking out, which is a sort of like bath plug type vertebral spinous processes. We never actually touch the vertebrae because they are in our core. So what we feel is sort of the outer edges of these spinous processes. And what I've been working on recently, which is handy as we're now asking these questions, and I have mentioned it before, is socks. So the arms, the hands and the arms in these socks that come in, and they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I was close, but not close enough. These socks. So at so your 7th cervical vertebrae, which is where you can feel this bump at the top of your ribs and the base of your neck, is where your arms grow from. And they're always looking to return back here. And what I've been working on recently, because we've talked about that a lot, that, embryo stage, this is where the arms grow from, and there's a reciprocal wave, if you like, always happening there. There's a pulse there, there's peristalsis to the tissues. We're always extending out of the spine into the hands and then back again. So we're always looking, if we can, to create space here. Because what happens is the head comes forwards when we're doing our, I'm just going to pop Mike down here before he suffers a major incident. What happens is that we've got like this pathway or this tunnel, if you like, that goes down through the centre of your palm. And if you tap the very centre of your palm, sort of middle finger underneath the knuckles, you might be able to feel that as a reverberation that goes all the way up, maybe through the forearm into the elbow, and depending on how much of this work you've done, you might feel that all the way up through the arm into sort of the underarm. If you get a bit up close and personal with yourself, there's this nice dip in the underarm. And if we press there, you can feel that the arms are going back to the spine. So when we're doing our jobs, and if we go for gardening, desk sitting is exactly the same thing. They're kind of the same thing, because we're looking at what we're doing, or we're reaching for something, and that brings the head forward, but it also causes the neck just to compress a little bit, because the natural curve of the spine is inwards, like the low spine. So we've got these two inward curves, and then we've got the roundness of the ribs and the roundness of the back of the pelvis, of course the roundness of the back of the head. And the head is heavy, we've talked about that before as well. So as the head comes forwards, it tends to go forwards and down a little bit. So we get this bit of a squishing up that happens. And that also pulls the shoulders up and in. And that pulls this kind of, if we think about the arms in sort of very long gloves or socks that all tie off at the spine, there's this kind of, this is contracting in, and this can cause the joints of the hands to start to feel a little bit restricted and constricted. And this is kind of the origins of your carpal tunnel and your tennis elbow and your stiff shoulders and all of those things. So the root is here at this crossover. This junction is a function junction. There's a lot of nerve, a lot of lymph, and a lot of blood works sitting up here as well. So generally, if the hands are going cold and we get pins and needles and all of that stuff, tends to be that the nerve trunking that's coming out through here is getting compressed, usually by the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade is sat on the back of the ribs too heavily, and that compresses the trunking. And also pectoralis on the front that we were discussing in our last session contracts a little bit as well, and starts to press on the trunking that comes down the underside of the arms into the hands. And that's why we get sort of, those Raynaud's and other bits and pieces. And Raynaud's is my personal friend. which I've worked with for a long time. And the more I've worked with head alignment and this top part of this, like a wishbone, if you like, at the top of the shoulders, the less the Reynolds becomes. So we'll get into some stuff today that will help you with that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of orientation about where we're working in the body. And what I want us to do today when we're going to lay on the floor in a second is just to, the correspondence is sort of between the collarbones here. If you feel this nice dip in between the collarbones, if we go in there in our mind's eye and be gentle, particularly if you're a little restricted in the throat, or have a tendency to set off your gag reflex. I know mine's quite set. Pam's already sneezing. This is going well. So it's this dropping back through between the collarbones, behind the voice box, and can we start to sort of visualize these bones and visualize, can we start to drop back and create a little space? So we'll get into that and we'll test that theory. Always a good thing to do. So we'll come into laying as we normally do. And hopefully this is going to work with my microphone and everything. Just see where we are. Okay. So we just want to drop back behind the eyes and behind the nose. And if we draw a line directly back into the back of the head, then we can start to just let those parts of the face just relax and release. And we know that the shower hat or the swimming hat that covers the whole of the head is buttoned in at your brow center. So it's always nice to just relax the face. If it's nice to put the thumbs in to the inner parts of the eye sockets at the bridge of the nose and just smooth upwards towards your forehead. And we can let the thumbs rest a little bit so we feel that heaviness of the back of the head. And we just want to feel that the back of the head can spread a little bit. So we feel that the ears get super, super heavy, that the jaw and the tongue and the cheeks can get super, super heavy. Notice if the draw on both sides of the face is equal. You might find that one side is happy to drop into the ground and the other side not so much. So can we just take that other side of the face and just drop that down, so we're getting that equal drop through the ears. And there's a smile that opens up on the back of the head in response to this when we take time to be here. You might feel this in the back of the pelvis and the low spine, so be mindful of the feet and the back of the pelvis as they sort themselves out, because the back of your head and the tissues that go down into the neck correlate and correspond with the back of the pelvis and the very, very low spine. So as one relaxes and starts to sort itself out, it's a spine-wide event. It's a body-wide event that starts to happen. It's never just in one place. So you might find that just taking the head from side to side, just micro movements initially, it's almost like, for those of us that drive, it's almost like correcting a car. It's tiny, tiny movements on the steering wheel of the head that just help us to create space at the very base of the skull. And we just start to be drawn down into the space at the very, very root of the tongue. There is a bone there, it's called the hyoid. And it's got its own connective tissue sling which goes all the way down the front of your chest into your heart. So we just want to feel that the jaw can drop back, that the tongue can drop back, and that the voice box can drop back. And we start to become aware of this lovely neck vertebrae. And some space that might start to open up in that neck vertebrae. If it's nice to just stroke the thumbs at the base of the skull, if you know that this is a tight area for you. As I said at the beginning, when the head comes forward, it's not on a straight line. It goes on a diagonal plane, sort of forwards and down towards the floor. So when we're working in this way and we've got the thumbs in the underside of the skull, we're looking at coming back on that diagonal plane, back towards the ground, but also up towards the top of the mat at the same time. And you'll feel that the jaw starts to get drawn back in, and that the neck bones can start to get a little bit of space. And you might find that that starts to mess around with shoulder blades and the back of the ribs. So as we sit in the back of the ribs, right at the very, very top, we're now sort of at that crossover point where we start to get to the vertebrae at the top of the ribs. We just feel that shoulder blades here can help you. So if we start to allow the shoulder blades to come down to the ground, we can put gravity buttons underneath them. And just start to feel that they can drop into the floor. And again, this deeply affects the neck. So in our mind's eye, if we think about those spine bones that we were looking at on the skeleton, just like the kinetic raindrops, can we put little weights under each individual neck vertebrae and just let them start to drop back into the ground? It sends the chest down to the end of your mat and sends the head up to the top of your mat. And it's quite a sleepy area for a lot of us. So if it's not immediately available in your mind's eye, stay with it. It is the only part of you that you will never actually see with your human eye, because whilst we can turn our head round and almost see our own bottom, this part of us right in the very back of the neck, top of the shoulders, we'll never see because we don't have the range with the head. So we have to learn to feel. And we do that as a process of just imagining different parts of us that are accessible. So eyes and tongue and all of those things. We've seen those in diagrams, voice box for some of us. And then we get into the bones, and can we just feel that the bones start to separate from each other, those lovely intervertebral discs that get pulled apart and then can rehydrate themselves because they're being pulled apart. And then the shoulder blades that just start to give life to the arms, that there's space into the underarm and this lovely rotational quality to the arms. So if we've got the arms over the body, maybe with the hands together or not, whichever is comfortable for you, what helps you to feel the arms can drop back through the socket and start to feed the spine. The arms feed space into the spine when we allow them to do that. Again, coming back to those socks and the you know, if it worked for you, that tapping on the very, very center of the palm, you can do that on one side and the other. And it's like an echo that goes down these lovely channels through the insides of the arms, all the way into the hollowness of the chest, the rib space on the inside of the chest cavity. So you might find that this gives you a little bit more space on the front of the chest, on the sternum, heart center, that sort of stuff. And the more space we give ourselves on the front of the chest, the more space we get between the shoulder blades. Can we walk down the inside of the ribs there? Or walk down through the inside of the rib spine there? The breath is broad. And when we breathe into that broad smile at the base of the back of the spine, base of the back of the ribs, that gives us more space at the sides of the ribs and the underarms again, so we get more freedom to the arms. And we can use the weight of the arms to our advantage to just keep dropping back through, dropping back through, dropping back through. And we might feel that the heart and the lungs can relax between the shoulder blades, and then we might feel that the tummy and the viscera can relax. That softness that's restored on the front of the front of the abdomen and between the hips, between those hip bones on the front, as that all starts to soften back. The more space we have at the neck spine and the rib spine is the more space we have at the low spine and the pelvis. And it is the other way around as well. So the more we allow the front of the tummy to drop back, we allow the sit bones to be broad, and we feel that everything on the front of the body is sucked back into the back body, the more space we get at that low spine sacrum connection also speaks directly to the neck and skull connection, and so it goes on all the way until it meets in the middle of the spine. So just keep feeling that there's this rolling away of the drawbridge of the sacrum. We just keep feeling that there's this broadening on the smile of the back of the head. And that will ripple down the vertebrae into the chest. So can we keep breathing broad? And the breath out just invites the front body into the back body. So if we just take the feet and establish those into the ground, just spreading the toes and finding the soles of the feet, we can just let the arms drift up towards the top of your mat. How far can we take the arms without the head moving or the neck spine being affected or the ribs being affected? And then we're just going to check in with the palms of the hands. Make that very soft and very broad across the underside of the knuckles of the hands. And we can just take the hands outwards and round and down. And that lovely big circle. So the hands end up down by the down by the hips. And then arms can just drop back through their sockets. Shoulder blades into the ground, and the arms will come up through the center again. And we should be able to feel that right down in the back of the ribs and the top of the lumbars, there's some change happening. Can we keep broadening through the ribs? We don't want to hang the arms out of the sockets. They're always going back through the socket to feed the spine, and it feeds the spine space. Your arms have the potential to free up or lock down the spine as they see fit or as you choose. So we feel that the ribs are drawn down into the pelvis while the hands and the arms are drawn up towards the top of the mat on their journey to make this lovely circle. So we've got this foundation, this rooty base at the back of the ribs that anchors the arms in and allows the arms to move. So the next time the arms come back over the body, just going to come over onto the right side. And these arm circles are familiar to us, so set yourself up with your... make sure I'm not losing my microphone. So set yourself up with, the head on the floor or the head on the arm or whatever feels good. Making sure you've got enough space behind you for your arm as well. So we start with the fingers on the shoulder. And again, we're just noticing, because the two movements are different. We've got the shoulders blades slide and glide in this movement. The ribs don't do much. Collarbone, can we encourage that to move on the front of the body? There's a nice opening into the tissues in the underarm. And we want to keep the ribs back into the spine, if we can. And then we're just going to lengthen the arm out. Fingertips come towards the floor. But again, we've got that reciprocal relationship where the weight of the hand and the forearm, the fingers are pulling down into the ground, but the weight of the long arm bone is drawing back through the socket into the spine. So as the arm comes up towards the top of your mat, if it's good to have the underarm on the front of the ribs to just check those, it's good. Because this is a ribby movement. So we're looking to just soften across the front of the ribs as the arm comes and draws in and connects to the back of the shoulder blades and the back of the ribs. Then we look to see if we can put two shoulder blades on the ground. And don't worry if that's not quite there yet, it's fine. But we tend to do a lot of work at the shoulder joint when we're doing our day-to-day activities, whether that's in the garden or at the desk. There's a lot happening at the shoulder joint. There's not a lot happening at the rib spine. And actually the rib spine has got quite a large degree of rotation available to it. So can we keep dropping the arm back through the socket into the solar plexus? getting that nice broadness through the ribs. And then the arm comes down back over the body. So just enjoying one more rotation here. Can we let the top of the hip go long down towards the end of your mat? Gives us more length to the waist. And we're just going to come back to the centre and just change over sides. So we're starting again with the fingers on the shoulder, and just noticing the difference between the two. The two are usually different, and that's okay. Got our dominant and our non-dominant side, so it may be that we feel more freedom or maybe a little restriction in the side. And that nice softening into the underarm. And then again, we're just going to bring the fingertips to the ground. And just establishing that connection at the elbow that sends the arm in two directions. And if we can just approach our movement without expectation. And just allow the tissues to just sort themselves out. You know, rib tissues can be quite, well, they're quite tough. Yes, we've got the ribby basket that protects all our vital organs and everything, but we've also got fairly tough stuff encasing that ribby basket, and quite rightly so, because you know we need our heart and our lungs. So just allowing the tissues to respond in their own time. Again, if it's good to have a hand on the front of the ribs, just to keep them level as you guide yourself round, particularly for those of us that are very flexible. It's very easy for us to drop into the low spine on this movement. If something doesn't move, something else most definitely can. And with this movement, it tends to be a little bit low spine. So can we keep that top hip long towards the end of the mat, the foot end of your mat? Give ourselves some integrity through the central core system, and then allow the ribs to. And we're coming back to centre in our own time. And just bringing your hand down in front of you to just bring yourself up, and you can come round into your lovely square pose. Pop that there for a second. So we've got hands underneath the shoulders and feet underneath the hips, knees underneath the hips. And if it's nice to just take the hands, just one hand forwards, so just a little bit forwards than the shoulder line. Pointy parts of the elbows look back towards the thigh, and that just helps the long arm bones to come back through the sockets again to reconnect to that place that's at the base of the neck and the top of the ribs. So it's the same process as when we were laying on our back, really. We let the nose come into the back of the head, the jaw to come into the back of the head, the tongue to come into the back of the head, and the voice box to float into the back of the neck spine. And could we imagine that somebody's just got a hold of the top of our ears very gently, and they're drawing your ears forwards and up towards the wall in front of you. And we get this movement where the jaw is drawn in and up, as I said before, on that diagonal. And when we do this with the ears, the head is naturally drawn out from between the shoulder blades and the heart center. You feel that the eyes and the nose and probably the covering of the face is drawn with it. But again, can we just drop into the very, very, very base of the skull where we had our thumbs when we were laying on the floor. Start to visualize the neck spine as having some space, and it's the rolling of the occiput, this sugar spoon on the back of the head, that draws the jaw back and starts to give us this lovely space into the neck. So can we keep dropping in there and getting right underneath the skull? And then following it down to that crossover into the ribs. So when we keep working through there, that will take us down behind the heart and the lungs. So can we walk through the inside of the rib spine, and we're just noticing how the vertebrae move. There might be some that are a little bit stiff and a bit sticky. There might be some that's a bit grumpy. There might be some that doesn't want to give up some space. There might be some that's a bit inaccessible for us. So we just keep dropping back in there. And it's an interesting one because it's just like a string of pearls, if you like. If we were picking them up off a surface, you know, the head would be the driver for it, and the other ones just get pulled along behind. But can we feel that as we do this, particularly as we get down into the base of the neck and the top of the rib spine, can we feel that this is starting to change the arms, and the top of the arms are getting drawn back through the sockets to the spine. And again, this is where we have to make that reciprocal relationship behind the knuckles and pulling down into the ground. The palms pulling down into the ground. And the force of the ribs drawing the arms in the opposite direction. And going in the opposite direction is exactly the same. So when we reach a point where we want to return back to the beginning, can we just let the nose float into the back of the head? Can we just let the jaw float into the back of the head? And that takes, again, if we were being pulled by the ears, forwards and up, towards the top of the wall in front of you, pulls the head out from between the shoulder blades, but it takes us in a different direction. And of course, rest when you need to, because it can be hard on the hands. How are we getting on? All the concentraty faces. I'm not sure having a cat under your face is the way forward. But you cannot possibly move them, so I completely understand. Somebody sent me a meme the other day saying they were in cat prison because their cat was sat on them and could not possibly move and they're going to be late. Apparently it's cat prison, you can't move them. So you might find that the more we drop into this place at the base of the skull and the sides of the neck, the more space we get in the hands. And you'll feel this in the low spine and the back of the pelvis as well. Because again, the more space we make at the top of the neck and the shoulders, and those tissues there, the more space we get in the low spine and the back of the pelvis. This is good. So just working through just for a moment more, and then we're going to come back into our lovely child pose. Again, we've got this big toe joints inside of the ankles. Can we let the shins sink and pull the floor apart, which gives us this broadness on the sit bones, which draws us back through, but we're leaving the hands, which are one hand width forward, leaving the hands pulling down into the ground. So we've got the sit bones pulling us back, the hands pulling down into the ground. So again, we're going in two directions at once. You'll feel it in the underarms. And we just start to feel that this side of the ribs, underarms, can start to get drawn open. Can we leave the jaw into the back of the head? So it's a sort of a more upright child pose than perhaps we're used to. index finger knuckle can get pulled down into the ground, which will give you space into the wrists. And then middle finger knuckle gets pulled down into the ground, which gives you space into the palm. Ring finger knuckle and little finger side will bring you into this back outer side of the arm and will take you directly down into the ribs. So we've got this amazing hand palm interface that the more we pull that down into the ground, and it feels like, you know, if we kept pulling here, we pull the mat back towards us. It's that kind of a pull. You feel the triceps engage on the back of the arm. You'll feel your biceps get involved, the sides of the ribs, serratus will get involved. It's that sort of thing. You know, we've got a real pull going on there. We keep dropping the shoulders back into the side of the ribs, back in the side of the waist. The more we do this, the more the arms come in, the more they feed the spine, get more space in the ribs, and we feel like the head is getting drawn, crown of the head is getting drawn forwards towards the wall in front of you, towards the top of the wall in front of you. We're always going, in these ones we're going up on the diagonal. The feet, the shins, will pull the pelvis down on the diagonal, and the arms will feed the ribs and the rib spine and the neck and take us up through the crown of the head. So we're kind of going these two directions at once. And then just coming back to that square pose once more and just noticing how that feels. Might feel a little bit longer in the body, which is never a bad thing. And they're just coming round to sitting, so making sure that you're comfortable here. So either having your cushion underneath you, or you can have a sofa at your back, whatever feels good. So again, we're just going to take our thumbs and they're just going to go behind your ear, and you'll find that bobbly bit, technical term, bobbly bit just behind your ear, and you'll feel that you've got the skull on one side and then that bobbly bit, and then it's nice and soft underneath, and we can just stroke the thumb along the underside of the occipital ridge. And again, this is really relaxing, releasing here. And can we just let the thumbs slide round the back of the head, drawing the head back and up. So again, taking the head out from between the shoulder blades. At the same time, we've got this deep palm, which is dropping the arms back through the socket and wrapping around the ribs and lifting the ribs off the waist. So it's nice to just have the hands on the back of the head. You can interlace the fingers if that feels good, because the weight of the head into the palms, again, takes the forearm and the palm in one direction, but allows the humeral bone, the long arm bone, to just hang back through its socket into the side of the waist again. And it might be that we start to feel that the low spine waist can hang down into the pelvis, and the pelvis can hang down into the ground. Sit bones get pulled down into the ground. So again, getting pulled in those two directions at once. We might need to give the hands a shake out. They've worked hard today, so give the hands a shake out and then come back in. But it's all about this settling back into the back of the head. Can we sit in the sling of the back of the head? And can we rest into the sling of that the arms provide around the back of the ribs? You know, like that flying squirrel type visualization that we can have. And can we sit in the sling that the legs provide in the back of the pelvis? So we've got these lovely slings that we can rest back into the back of the body. And when we've been working hard on the front, when we've been forward facing and those daily activities that are pulling us forwards, we tend to end up hanging off the bones in a forward facing way. So can we invite ourselves back into maybe the deck chair of the bones, if you like, or the deck chair of the slings of the fascia, and we just start to drop back and drop back and drop back into the back body, and it supports us well. How are we doing? Is that making sense?
I'm feeling quite emotional.
Oh, yes.
Makes sense.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And it's such an interesting, it's a great observation, Pam. We hold so much in this area, which is the reason a lot of us hold it closed. And, you know, could probably do a whole workshop on this, on emotional anatomy. We really could. You know, dropping into here when we're not able to speak outwardly or we're not able to speak inwardly to ourselves truthfully, we feel like we're a bit stifled here. You know, even as children, we can bring this through our whole lives. You know, we can be a little stuck here. Same in the heart center. You know, the body is the storehouse for our emotions, but also for our experiences as well. So it can be, as we start to drop back and in, it's also very vulnerable to be here with the front. You know, can we allow ourselves to be supported by something other than ourselves? If that makes sense, you know, it's a trust there. And for many of us, this is going to sound terrible at our age, for many of us, we feel that we can't trust our bodies quite as much as we would like to. So to be invited to actually to sit back into there and for, you know, those slings. I know I first sat back into my solar plexus sling and all hell broke loose. There were just tears and snot everywhere. Just because I'd never really walked in here. But it was a fantastic wall against, you know, I worked in a very male-orientated, male-dominated environment. I've also got some funky monkey characters in my family. So, you know, huge walls in this area, and then to soften through those as a process. So we go gently with ourselves. And, you know, in Vanda talked about this a lot, spontaneous releases of pressure. We're not sobbing things out, but maybe the face leaks a little bit as things can just to have the hand of the body on your shoulder saying, "Don't worry, I've got this," is an emotional thing, because for some of us that's the first time anybody's put their hand on your shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I've got this. You don't have to." And the relief from that can feel, you know, very revealing. So we keep going gentle with ourselves, but it is a reminder that your back body is supporting you beautifully all the time. Just the front of you is going, "What back body? No, I need to do everything." Because of course the eyes and the hands are at the front, so we're quite often forward facing, but we have got, just like relaxing back into faith, or relaxing back into the universe, or relaxing back into, you know, knowing that there's something else out there that's running the show. So the body is the same. There's a highly intelligent body right behind you that is running everything. Just sometimes the front body and the frontal cortex, of course, doesn't give it the opportunity to do that job for us. So a lot of the time we feel unsupported, and then to find out that it was there all the time can be a little, oh. So yes, it is very much so. And, you know, there is no separation between the two. You know, your body and your mind and your emotions and your energetic field is all together, and, you know, myriad other bits and pieces. And it's like a little self-massage that we have here, you know, and it's nice. It's whilst it can feel emotional, afterwards we generally would get the, that feels better, because there's a relaxation after the emotional wave that we just feel that we've got something to sit on. You know, the solar plexus is a bench that we can rest into and sit on. The back of the ribs is something, you know, the sling of the arms is there. We can rest back into that and sit in it. Same as the sling of the back of the pelvis. We literally can sit into that. And the head as well. It takes us out of emergency mode and into repose mode, which is a nice relaxation place. And if you've been busy doing for a long time, you know, and I know you've been busy a bit recently with lots of things happening. So just that, oh, we're finished. We can relax. Yes, you can relax. And somebody sort of goes, ah. We can stand down. Yes, you can. Ah. So be okay with that. And we have cultural and societal norms that are completely wrong, that go, you're not supposed to show any emotion, rubbish. Stiff upper lip and all that. What ho? Yeah, we don't go in for any of that malarkey either. So it's that keeping coming back. Good. So if you want to stay sitting, stay sitting. If you want to lay down, you can lay down. We're going to just do a visualization where we're walking down the inside of the spine. So wherever feels the most comfortable for you. And we're just going to go in behind the voice box. And again, if you are feeling emotional, it's okay. If it's not feeling comfortable, that's okay too. So if it's not feeling comfortable, you can just put your hands on your tummy and you can breathe there. But if you're happy to drop in behind the voice box, can we just feel that we've got that nice divide between the neck and the rib spine? And can we just rest there and see if space comes at that vertebrae? It feels like the neck has just got a little bit of separation from the ribs, and it feels like the shoulders can drop back down and the ribs can drop back down into the sling of the solar plexus. And that will take you down behind the heart, which again is a very quiet place in behind the heart. So can we just rest into there? Find the vertebrae between the shoulder blades. And again, can we just make it heavy? Make that vertebrae heavy so that it can drop down into the ground. And we might find that there's a broadness that opens up at the base of the ribs. It's like this sort of butterfly broadness. Draws the solar plexus back. But it really, each time we have this lovely broad draw, the breath out will drop the shoulders away from the ears a little bit more and create you a little bit more space between the voice, behind the voice box, between the base of the neck and the ribs. And it's like expansion. It's like something is just very, very gently coming apart and expanding, relaxing and releasing there. So we're going all the way up Maybe take you all the way into the head. And it might take you all the way down through the low spine as well. So just feeling that with each breath, we've got this beautiful expansion happening between the vertebrae, and with each breath out, there's a relaxing back into the slings on the back of the body. There's a broadening at the pelvis that happens, there's a broadening at the shoulder that happens, and there's a broadening at the ears that happens. Can we just rest there? This is good. So we're just going to give the fingers and toes a wiggle, making some rotations with the wrists and the ankles. Taking the arms up over the head and the legs long for a nice stretch through your body. And bringing the knees up to the chest, giving the knees a nice hug. A little rock from side to side if you're laying. And returning back to sitting in your own time, just taking a moment to check in with yourself. Notice how you feel. Good. Good work today, lovelies. Deep work today, lovelies.